And welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your Leeds United news show. And like always, through the January transfer window, we have got loads to discuss today. Not any new stories as such, but all just basically developments, all the stories that we've been covering over the last few days. So we've got a bit of development regarding Strand Larsen. So we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk about Isaac Johnson's been talking today in Leeds Live regarding where Leeds United's next priorities after the Buonanotte signs come in for Leeds United to go get. Are they going to go get a new left wing back that people have talked about? Are they going to go get another centre back? So we'll talk all about what he's been discussing today and actually what Graham's been discussing. Graham went on the square ball at the weekend, but it came out obviously today, and he's discussed loads about transfers, and there was loads of really big segments in there. I watched the whole thing, and obviously I've quoted it all down for you guys, which we'll talk about what he said, because there was some really interesting things in what he said, so we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk a bit about sort of this Harry Wilson thing that's been going on as well. We know obviously Leeds United went in for Harry Wilson this summer. It was an unsuccessful approach. They went in for about 6-7 million. That was going to be the deal. Obviously we know Fulham pulled it. This is where we know. But could Leeds United revisit Harry Wilson in January, in the summer transfer window, should I say? And would that be a possibility that could happen? Marco Silva's already said at Fulham that he will not leave in the January transfer window, so this will be moved for the summer if it was to happen. But could Leeds United potentially get Harry Wilson over the line? He has apparently come out and said that he would be open and looking forward to ideally moving back up north again, potentially because his family's up there. However, we'll talk all about that as well. Obviously, Jack Harrison did leave for Fiorentina today as well. Don't want to talk too much about that, but that is the truth. So he's gone now. It's a shame, actually, with Jack Harrison. For a player that scored such a vital goal away at Brentford for Leeds United, the way his career's gone, and it's completely of his own making, obviously choosing to sort of forfeit Leeds United and go to Everton on loan when we got relegated and throw us under the bus when we were sinking. Yeah, it's a shame, really, for a player that scored that brilliant goal for us to be ending the way it is, where it's so sour and literally nobody cares and everyone just wants rid of him. But, you know, that's fundamentally down to him, so no one else to blame, really. But himself. Sebastian says, good evening to you, Sebastian. Hope you're doing well. Jaguar Skill says, think Wilson wants to move back to the north of the country. Yeah, that's what we were saying, mate. I think that could be interesting. Do we want to go for Harry Wilson? No, as I said, we'll talk all about that. Obviously, as well, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. The support, I always say recently, especially through this January transfer window, has been unbelievable, and it is down to the fact that you guys have been commenting, liking and subscribing. It just boosts because I'm a small channel, as I've talked about in basically every video. We're bored of me saying it, but it just boosts my account massively. So if you could do that, that would be absolutely fantastic. Miller Leeds fan says, evening everyone, evening to you too, Miller, and obviously evening to the rest of you as well. Anyway, let's get into the Strand Larsen story. That is the big thing today. And this has all come, as I said, from what Graham was saying on the square ball today. And he was basically saying, which I found really interesting, I don't think we've had this clarity. And I always like it when these sort of journalists go on podcasts, because I think you get more of an explanation about what's actually going on. And he said actually that he believes there is a real chance that Leeds United will land Strand Larsen in the January transfer window. And he also says, with this inquiry, usually apparently when Leeds United inquire for a player, yes, they obviously inquire for a player, and that's fine, and he reports it. But he says they usually sort of turn around and go with a sort of their policy regarding this is to go, oh, if it's unlikely, they go, well, this is quite unlikely, it probably won't happen, it's a difficult deal to get over the line. He says he hasn't had actually that much negativity back from Leeds United, saying that this is a really tricky deal to do and it's really, really complicated. Yes, there've been some mention of that, but it's not been sort of really pushed through the media and pushed from the Leeds United football club as a whole. And he also said, if Leeds United are inquiring in this, because I think there's obviously been talk regarding PSR, obviously naturally with this deal, how do Leeds United possibly finance it? But he's saying if Leeds United are making an official inquiry for the services of Strand Larsen, they think that there is a way on a PSR basis they could do it, because Leeds United, he said, don't make inquiries unless there is they believe genuinely this is a possible deal to do. And he says they haven't shut down the idea that this won't happen that strongly, which again they would normally do. Obviously it's an understandable deal, and we know that Leeds United have huge competition for this deal, and Graham says this on the square ball today, saying that actually basically probably all the bottom half teams will actually take Strand Larsen. I think that's probably fair, and I think obviously the one from an outsider's looking in at this moment in time that seems really obvious to me regarding obviously the Strand Larsen deal is Crystal Palace. We know Mateta has been linked away from there. We know he's been obviously linked to Juventus and a number of sort of other clubs as well. If he was to move on in the January transfer window, it does sort of feel like Strand Larsen would be an obvious replacement in there. Similar profile to Mateta, strong, physical, maybe not quite as strong and physical as Mateta, but I think arguably a better finisher than Mateta, in my personal opinion. People are going to throw the stats at me about how many goals Mateta scored in comparison to Strand Larsen. I get that, but I've watched the two players, and for me, as I said, maybe Mateta's stronger and a bit more physical than Strand Larsen, but I actually think Strand Larsen's a better finisher, in my personal opinion. As I said, that's controversial. I was talking to about my brother and dad yesterday, and they said, Scott, you're having a laugh. But that is kind of my feeling on it. But I just thought when I saw this, I was like, this is really encouraging, because I think obviously with the Schmidt deal, which we'll talk about obviously later in the video as well, that looks like it's pretty much dead in the water, and I think obviously it kind of seems obvious. But he was basically saying with this, as I said, that the club are really actively pursuing this, and they do actually think a deal is achievable. And they basically they've inquired to see sort of where Wolves are at, and apparently Wolves haven't come back yet to Leeds United regarding the Strand Larsen sort of inquiry to sort of test the waters. They haven't come back with any sort of a deal sort of structure for Leeds United to sort of get on board with and start the full-on sort of price negotiations about how much he's going to cost, how the deal's going to be structured, etc. So I think that's where we're currently at in the sort of Strand Larsen deal. But there is genuine interest there, and there is also genuine possibility from Graham, who we know, as I said, if the football club are saying it to Graham, we know the football club want it out in the space, or at least are happy for this to go out in the space. And if Leeds United are happy for it to go out in the space, there is a genuine possibility of Strand Larsen coming in January. I am telling you for a fact, because of how this club operate and how this current ownership operates, that means that they genuinely think there is a genuine chance that Leeds United land Strand Larsen in January, which on a personal level for me, as someone who is really pushing this Strand Larsen deal and thinks it's a really good deal for Leeds United and a really ambitious move, I am absolutely delighted with it. And I almost, to be honest with you, when I was listening to the podcast today, I actually almost couldn't believe what he was saying, because I've almost felt this whole time this Strand Larsen deal, yes, obviously I trust David Ornstein, and we talked about sort of the conversion rate of David Ornstein when he says a story to it actually happening. But I still was in the back of my head thinking, this, I just don't see this happening really. Maybe he goes to Palace, obviously, if Mateta's to move on, but I don't really see him coming to Leeds. But Graham's giving me a bit of hope today. He really has. Anyway, let's get into some of your guys' comments, because there's absolutely loads flying in. Wilson may choose Everton as it's closer to his North Wales roots. Potentially, Gavin. I didn't see Everton interested, but I imagine they are interested. They do have a good front line as it is, though. Boca says no to Larsen. I've seen this a lot, this no to Larsen. I think it's kind of recency biased in my opinion. Yes, he's not had a particularly good season at Wolves, but I mean, which player at Wolves has had a particularly good season? We know the likes of a João Gomes, etc. in midfield are good footballers. Even that Andre's a decent player. They've got quite a number of decent players at Wolves, but none have been playing well. But that doesn't mean these are bad players. Like you look at this Andre, you look at João Gomes, for example. He's linked to Man United. He's linked to Atletico Madrid. He's linked to a lot of top clubs. So I think sometimes we need to bear in mind, yes, Wolves have been bad. And yes, that means that their players are playing poorly. But that doesn't mean that just because they're playing poorly in a Wolves team, they're going to play poorly for everyone. And we did see when Strand Larsen played in a much better Wolves team last season, where he had much more of a supply line with the likes of Aït-Nouri in the team, with the likes of Matheus Cunha in the team, how much better he was and how many goals he managed to score, obviously getting 14 last year. So I think in a Leeds United team, where we do create chances for our number 9, as we've seen with Calvert-Lewin, maybe not as much as we want, but we do create chances for our number 9. I do think we'd see a lot more goals scored for Strand Larsen. And I think I don't think it's lazy, because as I said, people might think sort of based on last year they didn't want him, but obviously after last year's season, Newcastle wanted him. And we're bidding £60 million. So he was clearly at a certain level that's obviously dropped in terms of where his stock is. But you do have to bear in mind sort of the alternative factors that when we look through the Wolves team, as I said, you are naturally going to struggle as a striker when you've got no Cunha, who was one of the best creators in the league last year and one of the best scorers, who obviously takes the mantle off sort of Strand Larsen, which means you don't have to do everything. And you take out probably one of the best attacking fullbacks in the league last year in terms of Aït-Nouri, who got like 7 or 8 assists. When you take them out and take that spine line out, naturally the striker's going to struggle. So I think we've got to bear that in mind when we talk about that. But maybe you don't want him anyway, Becco, or Boca, should I say. Even though I hope the Larsen transfer was going to happen, but I always thought it was a bit ambitious. Fingers crossed, though. That's kind of where I'm at, Gipton. I know, as I said, Graham seems sort of fairly optimistic from what he made out today, but you do feel like it might just be a step too far, especially in the January transfer window. Like, I think if Leeds United would stay up this summer, I think we can look forward to some really ambitious deals. I think that's the next step, because I've always felt with this ownership, they've really, for the most part, I've usually tried to push the boat in terms of ambitious targets. But I think a lot of the time we've been hamstrung with this ownership, where we've either been in the Championship and these players don't want to play in the Championship, or we're a newly promoted Premier League club, and again, the big players that we're interested in have been put off. for example, obviously Bijol in the summer, maybe Muniz as well. Maybe these players had Leeds United been in the league for a season and show that they're sort of more established, they would have been more interested in coming. But that didn't stop the ambition of the ownership to go and try and look at these players. So I do think the next step of Leeds United, if they do stay up, will be to look at some more ambitious deals. I really do. But maybe this January transfer window might come a bit early for an ambitious deal, like the Strand Larsen one obviously is. So yeah. I guess that's I think that's something to bear in mind. But if we do stay up, as I said, I think the ambition of the football club will be something that we're all excited by. I might be wrong, but I think we're getting a bit of a sort of flavour of what the summer transfer window could be like with this Strand Larsen deal, and I think it's exciting times. I really do. I watched him for 3 years here in Celta Vigo. Fair enough, but he didn't have a good time in Celta Vigo. But that doesn't mean that he's an awful player. And I think they've got to look into something that he did obviously last year, Boca, when he was really good at Wolves. There was no doubt about it. And as I said, Newcastle were bidding £60 million in the summer. So again, you've got to bear that in mind. Sebastian said it's a big advantage that his agent is a Leeds fan. Yeah, that is very true, Sebastian. I think something's important to mention. I think this again was mentioned on the sort of podcast that today that I think Graham said, which I think is a really good point, is that it can't not help. I know obviously it would help if Strand Larsen was a Leeds fan, which he's obviously not, but it can't not help that his agent is a Leeds United fan, because apparently sometimes in transfer negotiations, and this makes complete sense to me, sometimes you've got to convince the agent of the football club, not just the player. Like we always think when we're selling, like the Bijol deal in the summer, we've got to convince Bijol, but sometimes maybe you have to convince the agent, who will then convince Bijol for you. Leeds United, with this obviously Tor Pedersen link that obviously Strand Larsen's got with his agent being a Leeds United fan and a season ticket holder apparently, that is a massive advantage for Leeds, a massive advantage, because he will be able to sell the project to Strand Larsen for us, and that again, it can't not help, can it? The only issue is when you look at sort of around the league, and we talk about Crystal Palace, London-based, which players always like, and of course they're in Europe this season. Although it does look a bit at the moment with Crystal Palace like a bit of a sinking ship. So let's hope that Mateta doesn't move in January. They keep him, but even if they do sell him on, let's hope that they sort of, Strand Larsen maybe chooses to come to us just based on the fact that sort of that Tor Pedersen link, etc., and the fact that maybe we're hopefully in a more ambitious project than them long term. I think Crystal Palace fans would disagree with that, but I think you guys obviously know where the 49ers want to be. Maybe that is true. Big Quick says, I wonder we could put Wober Schmidt as part of the deal for Schmidt. Let's talk about this Schmidt deal, because I wanted to mention it, and it's now you've brought it up, it seems like a really good option, a really good time to mention it. I don't think the Schmidt deal is going to happen. I've got to be honest. I came on stream yesterday and we talked about the idea that Graham's usually behind with this stuff, and that sort of Florian Plettenberg's a really good source, and obviously Fabrizio Romano's a really good source. And I think that they are a really good source. I still buy this. But when you think logically, and we were saying it yesterday on stream anyway, so I don't quite know, I didn't put two and two together. Why would Leeds United go for another number 10 when they've just bought Buonanotte? And then you see sort of Zinny Boswell, who came out sort of shortly after did the show, and sort of what Graham was saying again regarding this today, and Isaac said it as well in Leeds Live, and I think what's clearly happened here is I do think Leeds United did want Schmidt, and I think this is someone that possibly in the summer transfer window they will go back in for and maybe look at again, depending obviously how other deals form and sort of which league we're playing in next year, hopefully the Premier League of course. But I think what's happened with Schmidt is that we were looking at a number 10. He was one of the names on the team, he was one of the names on the sheet. I think we have obviously made initial contact, which is what Graham said today. But as soon as the Buonanotte deal became available, that was a deal that suited Leeds United more. A loan deal probably with our financial structure at this moment in time probably made more sense to Leeds United, with obviously the loan of Buonanotte, and the fact that obviously he's a bit more Premier League proven probably than Schmidt as well. Just made that deal more easy to do for Leeds United, and a better deal for Leeds United. And I think basically he's saying that now Leeds United have done a number 10. They don't expect to do another number 10. Obviously, different things can happen in the market, but they don't expect another number 10 to happen. And actually, I think when you piece stuff together about sort of where we're at with this deal and sort of logically what would probably be the situation with this, it does seem kind of obvious to me, to be honest, that Leeds United won't do this deal. And as I said, it doesn't mean that Romano got it wrong. It doesn't mean that Florian Plettenberg got it wrong. I just think they were maybe sort of a week behind on the news. And I think now probably the agent shared that news with Florian Plettenberg, and maybe Werder Bremen have shared it with Florian Plettenberg and Romano. just to basically try force up a bit of interest in Schmidt, which maybe they want to offload because of their current position. So I don't know. I think that's potentially where we're at. He's terrible. Look at Celta now. He's a lump. Celta are scoring goals for fun now. You're really not a fan of Strand Larsen, are you, Boca? I'm surprised at that because he's. Yeah, I think he proved in this year how good he was in the first year. Jack says, even Scott, even to you too, Jack. He doesn't even get into the Wolves team. I think we've covered a lot of your chats, Boca. I appreciate your opinion. We obviously understand all opinions on the channel, but I just disagree, I guess. I think Strand Larsen is a big gamble, says Gavin. Well, but every signing is a gamble fundamentally. I mean, name a signing that's never been a gamble. There isn't one. Every single signing comes with a gamble. And honestly, Gavin, I do think again with this deal, if Leeds United, if Strand Larsen was on say 10 goals already this season, or having maybe a season like he had last year, even if on 7+ goals this season, we wouldn't be getting him in the January transfer window. It wouldn't happen. And even a Leeds United that stay in the division are not going to be looking at them sort of players because they're going to be going for 60, 70 million pounds. As I said, if Strand Larsen gets another sort of 14, 15 goals and did that for Wolves again this year, you're not looking at a 30 to 40 million pound signing. You're looking at a sort of 60 to 70 million pound deal, and Leeds United are not going to be involved in them numbers. So when I'm saying that sort of basically what I'm saying is that every signing Leeds United make because of where we are is going to be a bit of a gamble. And yes, he's not had a great season so far. We've talked about the sort of reasons for that, but you've also got to bear in mind as well, mate, sort of where we're at as well. And yeah, I think I've explained it there as best I can. I think. If Leeds can sign Strand Larsen this window, they don't need to look at the strike in the summer, as you have a direct replacement for DCL if he's injured. Exactly. And I think we've talked about this quite a bit, Sebastian, but obviously with the Strand Larsen deal, I think, again, this is a summer target that basically may become an option or has some availability potentially for Leeds United to do a deal in January. So essentially, we're just bringing the timeline forward and going, well, we were going to maybe look at him in the summer, but actually we could get him now. And maybe as a good end to the season with Wolves, and he becomes non-available for Leeds United anymore, whereas now he potentially is available for Leeds United and maybe it is possible to do. So maybe we do it while we've got the chance. And I think that's something, again, to bear in mind. Walter Marder, now a flop. Toon, also 65 million. But has he been a flop, really? Has Voltemade been a flop? I don't think he has, mate, if I'm being honest. I think he's going through a rough spell, but in Newcastle in general kind of are. Toon has spent 130 million on the last 3 transfers. Now look like flops. I'm not sure. I think it's not on. Where did you hear that? I heard it from Graham Smyth on the Square Ball, mate. Who has got links to the club, as we mentioned yesterday. Rich says, would you start if we signed Strand Larsen? Surely he ain't coming to sit on the bench. Would I start Strand Larsen if he comes? Well, I don't think. I think obviously if Strand Larsen comes into the football club, he comes in as direct competition for DCL. DCL's obviously had a fantastic season so far, and if I've been totally honest, I wouldn't want to bring him out for nearly anyone at this moment in time. Obviously, you could, if Haaland came in, you'd bring him out for him. But Strand Larsen isn't miles better than DCL to the point where you'd instantly come in and start. But I think you'd obviously try and find a way for Strand Larsen to start. And I do obviously think that opens up the idea of going back to the 3-5-2. I know people say we're playing the 3-5-2 at the moment. From what I've seen, we're not. We're playing a sort of 5-4-1/3-4-3. It depends how you look at it. But that's the formation we're playing. Whereas I think, as I said, if Strand Larsen was to come in, I think you could see what we saw against Chelsea, where we had obviously Nemetra and DCL up front, and you could look at maybe playing Strand Larsen and DCL up front. I think that would work. Glad we're not going for Schmidt, says Daith. Sorry, I butchered your name. Yeah, I didn't mind the player, and when you look through sort of the profile, he didn't look he had quite a lot to offer, but I just didn't think we needed him. I didn't think he was the priority, and we know Leeds United are working on a limited budget. If Leeds United had 50 million in January, let's go get him, but we don't have 50 million in January, do we? With Leeds missing out on some top deals this summer, this would be great. Presumably, are you talking about Strand Larsen? Yeah, I agree. Bijol now looks like a lucky escape, says Gavin. Yeah, potentially, but again, obviously, different league, different team. Maybe we're playing a different way to Marseille play. And obviously we do, because Fart didn't play the same way as De Zerbi as we saw at Brighton. So yeah, maybe it was a lucky mistake, but I still do think Bijol's a good player, mate, if I'm being honest. We need defenders, says Boca. Well, this brings me on to something that has been said today, because obviously when you say we need defenders, Boca, I presume you're referring to sort of a left wing back and a centre back. And I agree with you. I do think when you look through the team at this moment, we do look quite light in them positions especially. Like, I still worry if Goodmanson was to go down, who is going to fill in at left wing back. Obviously, I think beforehand, it might, as much as people might hate this, it might have been Jack Harrison that fills in at left wing back. We saw him obviously play left back for a short time against Forest. Yes, it was a disaster, but he can actually sort of play there. I look through our sort of squad makeup now, and I think, well, who actually could play there really? I'm not even sure. James Justin, but again, I think maybe left centre back he could do a job, but left wing back where he's got to go down and prioritise using that left foot, which is obviously not his strongest foot, again, I don't think works. So we are sort of touching wood with the idea of that Goodmanson can't get injured at any point. So I do agree with you on the left wing back role for sure. And I actually think it'd be quite nice to bring in maybe an up and coming player. Could we bring someone in sort of for a cheap fee who's like a young lad who can sort of work under Goodmanson and then obviously step in when he needs to do, but it's not maybe fully ready to go yet, and then maybe in a few years can take over Goodmanson or has got that sort of development in his game that could do that. Or do you look at a loan? But I think I do sort of agree with you in terms of maybe we do need to look at left wing back because we haven't seen Goodmanson out injured yet. But it could happen. I mean, I think he's got quite a good injury record actually throughout his career. But anyone can get injured at any time. But playing football gets you injured naturally. Of course it does, because there's duels involved and anything can happen. And I do worry if he was to go down, where we'd go. Because I think a lot of our attacking prowess down the left-hand side is obviously through Goodmanson and the great overlaps that he can do and the energy offers down that side. So I do think it would be ideal if we can bring in, we don't have to spend loads of money, but if we can bring in a left wing back of some regard, if it's a young lad that's cheap, that's doing well in maybe a lower league, maybe in the Championship or something, or if we could sort of bring in a loan, I think that would make sense. I really do. And then in terms of the centre-back, again, I agree with you. And obviously we've looked at that Dookie, of course, of playing for Union Berlin. I don't think that's going to happen now by the looks of it. I think they're obviously wanting too big of a fee in January for what probably Leeds are willing to pay. But again, can we look at doing a loan? I remember at one point we were linked to a Leipzig centre-back, that French Leipzig centre-back. Could we do something like that? Just something one can come in and replace the attributes of certain players that we've got. Because again, to say we're playing with three at the back, we are quite short. But again, if you're looking at sort of what the journalists think and what the journalists are saying, we're not buying a defender, nor we're buying a left wing back. Apparently, Fark said in this, obviously in his presser at the weekend that, and I think maybe Berry asked him this. I think at the weekend, I think Graham said that today, that they asked basically because of Bijol's situation, does that mean that Leeds United go and get a centre back? And he basically said he's only out for 3 to 5 weeks, so no. But if that changes, then maybe he doesn't recover from his sort of injury quick enough. Then maybe they'll look at doing something. But at this moment, it's not a priority, so that means to me that they're probably not going to do a centre-back, which is, I think, a bit maybe could be a concern at some point, but let's have a look. Anyway, I'm going to have to scroll down comments, by the way, so apologies for that. There's just too many tonight to get through. Nonto can't get in the Leeds team. It doesn't make him a bad player. Exactly, says Miller. Miller's nailed that. You're absolutely right. Think Pro might end up at Celtic. I don't think he will, mate. I think that's been dismissed because obviously it's just such a bad look for the ownership structure of the 49ers to sell to Celtic and potentially help them win the division. Because in a Celtic team where they'll create loads of chances for Pro, he will score quite a few goals, in my opinion. So that would be a bad idea. And truthfully, I just don't think it'll happen. My name is Irish for David. Okay, can I call you David then? Is that probably is easy for me, in truth. Strand Larsen being awesome pairing with DCL, wouldn't need to look in the summer. He was great last season in a poor Wolves. In a poor Wolves this or even worse. He is great if we could get him. Yeah, I agree, Stephen. I think Strand Larsen's got a lot to offer. And as I said, we've seen with players before that haven't done as well, but have actually got a bit of Premier League experience. aka DCL, who actually had his big season maybe a few years ago, and we've seen the sort of development we've seen in his game. And obviously Strand Larsen's younger, 25 years old, and I actually think Calvert-Lewin's probably much better in the air than sort of Strand Larsen. I think DCL's actually one of the best aerial strikers, maybe even generally in world football. He's that good in the air, DCL. But I actually think on the deck, I think Strand Larsen's probably a better natural finisher than Calvert-Lewin. That's just my opinion. I do actually think Calvert-Lewin's hold-up play is better, but I think that Strand Larsen on the deck, if you put him if I had to take one striker going one-on-one with a goalkeeper, Strand Larsen or DCL, I would probably take Strand Larsen, to be honest. I'm late. I was starting Strand Larsen. We're quite strongly linked to him, mate. But Jim, but I'm not fully sure. My name is Irish for Stephen. I love the idea. But the ship has sailed. I'm not sure what that's relevant for, mate. In truth, if there's any replacement for Gabby, DFF will probably take the left back of the under-21s team. Don't know if this is a real option, otherwise it'd be Byram. Yeah, but Byram again. I think these players that we're mentioning in terms of James, Justin and Byram can both do a job at left back. It's the left wing back role I worry about more, because it relies a lot more of attacking work. And I just don't see either of them having any sort of capabilities in an attacking standpoint in comparison to what Goodmanson can do for us. I really don't see that, and I think that is a huge concern. And as I said, if I were the 49ers, I would be looking at options for Leeds United to go and get a left wing back as a serious priority, because that could really damage us. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a bit tonight. I think I've maybe got the end of a cold, and obviously it's making my voice a bit sort of crap, so apologies for that. Anyway, let's talk a bit about this Harry Wilson link, shall we, as well, because this is something that's been going around for a while. I'm not actually surprised at this sort of Harry Wilson situation at all, if I'm being totally honest. I think as well, because of our sort of Welsh contingent that we've got for the football club at this moment in time, when you look at Joe Rodon, when you look at Ethan Ampadu, when you look at Carl Darlow, they'll obviously all be talking to Harry Wilson on Wales duty and sort of maybe influencing him to come to Leeds United. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if Leeds United end up getting Wilson in the summer at all. I actually wouldn't. I think when you look through the options, if we stay in the Premier League, I think with our sort of Welsh contingency that we've got at this moment in time at the football club, I think that will be quite a good place for him. And I look through the team, and obviously Buonanotte, I don't think we'll sign in the summer. So I think Buonanotte is just going to be a loan. I think fundamentally he'll end up in the Brighton team next year, if I'm being honest. So I don't think he'll come. So there will be an obvious gaping hole for a player like that in the Leeds United team in the summer. And with the season that sort of Harry Wilson's having at this moment in time, the ability to get him on a free, I think, will attract Leeds United. We know Leeds United, because of how the PSR works, when naturally free agents would be a really good option for us. And obviously Harry Wilson knows that we've been in for him in the past as well. So there's that sort of understanding there that we do see a role for him in the Leeds United setup. And then I think of the options, when you look at sort of Forest, Sunderland and Leeds, maybe Sunderland get into Europe and maybe he fancies that. But as I said, I actually think with the sort of Welsh contingency that we've got at the football club, and not just the Welsh contingency that we've actually got some of the best Welsh players in the country at the moment. When you look at sort of the likes of Ethan Ampadu, who's our captain, but obviously a mainstay in the Welsh team. Joe Rodon's probably the best centre-back in the Welsh sort of squad as well. I think that's a huge benefit for us. I really do. And I think there's a chance. I'm not... Look, Harry Wilson won't happen in January, because Marco Silva's sort of said it. But I think of the options that might be available for him this summer, I think Leeds United will go there. And I wouldn't be that surprised if he says yes to Leeds United at all. I really wouldn't. I think it's I think that's a doable deal, which would be good, because obviously he's been fantastic this season. I know he hacked down Goodmanson at the weekend. For me, it wasn't a red card, for the record. I thought it was one of them strong yellows, but I didn't think it was quite a red card. But I still thought he looked like the best player. Like, he played a pass in the first half to, I think, Lukic, who had a header at goal. And it was just like a moment of class. And I thought any time he got on the ball, I was kind of concerned, which I wasn't with any other Fulham player. And we know he's been brilliant for them this season. I think he's got 11 goal contributions in the league as well, having a fantastic season. So would make sense. The only thing is, when they're 29 years old and you get them on a free and you put them on a long, probably on a decent contract and on good money, that can always be a concern for me. It can be a concern. We've seen loads of players in the past doing like that. Just Harry Wilson doesn't strike me as that sort of character, but you just never know, do you? You never know. But overall, would I take Harry Wilson? Do I think it's plausible? One, I do think it's plausible. And two, yes, I would take him. Because as well, when you look at Forest, maybe more attractive this year, but they're not going to be in Europe next year, are they? Unless they win the Europa League, which I don't think they will. So yeah. So that looks like a decent option as well. Anyway, thanks all for watching as always. I've really enjoyed the show tonight. Apologies, I will go on longer, but my voice is going to give out. Sebastian says, smash a like for Scott to help him. Thank you very much. And yeah, if you have just joined, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff really helps the channel. I'm obviously a smaller channel, trying to build it up. So when I get a sort of higher video on likes compared to others, it goes, wow, that must be a good video, better than he normally does. Let's smash it to every Leeds fan in the world, and I basically get more views. So if you could do that, as I said, it would be fantastic. Let's have a look at some of your comments, and then we will wrap it up, because I said my voice, you can just feel it going. If there's no replacements for Gabby, I've read that one. Transfers are like March in a lion out of a maybe. I'm not sure what you mean, mate, if I'm being honest. Do you still see opportunities in this team for Dan James, except the bench, to make a difference on a certain moment? That's a really good question, mate. Do I see Dan James in the future of Leeds and sort of how does he play in the team? Not really, mate, if I'm being honest. The only way I see him is, at the moment, as I said, we're sort of playing a sort of 5-4-1 system, but Aronson obviously naturally drifts inside, which I think suits that because we're only playing two main midfield players in obviously Ampadu and obviously Gruev at the weekend, but Ampadu and Stack normally. So I don't think he'd suit that role. So I think the only position he probably fits in at the moment for Leeds United is that right wing back role. And I think that's obviously not something you're going to start with. But if maybe Leeds United are chasing the game, we know when we play in possession a lot of the time, we actually move to sort of a 4 at the back and we sort of go sort of 4-5-1 or a 4-3-3 in possession. We always do that. Aronson pushes further on. Bogle almost plays like a right winger at times. And then when Rodon plays in that role, he goes into sort of a right back role. Or at the weekend, obviously, Justin plays in that sort of right back role. And I actually think late on in games, if we're chasing a game, maybe Dan James could fit in that Bogle role that pushes on and becomes much higher. And I think that would work, actually. So that's the only way I sort of see him incorporating himself into this Leeds United team in that particular role, as Vincent says, as the right wing back. Other than that, I don't really see where else he's going to play, if I'm being honest. Maybe he could play that Okafor role that we're playing on the left, because he obviously starts up front and moves to the left-hand side. Maybe that could be a situation. But again, I see more of the competition there being Wilfred Gnonto, and I see sort of Buonanotte being the sort of interchange with Brendan Aronson in that sort of number right wing role. So, yeah, I'm not fully sure with Dan James, mate, if I'm being honest. Anyway, as I said, thanks all for watching. As always, as I said, like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help me. And I will see you all tomorrow, everybody, for some more Leeds United news, and we'll just stick with 8 o'clocks. I know there's Champions League tonight, but truthfully, people can watch the Champions League and have this on in the background if they want to listen. So we'll just stick with the 8 p.m s. I think that's the way we're going to go forward. But yeah, thanks all for watching. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Bye for now. Bye for now.